Call this meeting order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Councilmember Olson is absent. All other council members are present. We had an amended agenda that was presented to us this evening. We have a couple additions to the agenda. Under 8A, we had unfinished business and updated hydrology and hydraulic study proposal for Beltline and Getty, and also under 9C, under new business, proposal for shared part-time patrol officer. Anything other changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Dave, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Warren. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. At this time is our minutes from our July 2nd meeting. Is there any changes or corrections to the minutes as presented? I see none. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Warren, seconded by Dave. Any discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. This time is our public open forum. Is there anybody here who wishes to address the council? Please stand to the mic and state your name and address and your comments.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Diane Kelly, 418 2nd Street South, Sauk Center. I just want to say you guys do a great job. I know you have a hard job here.
Thank you.
But I'm here complaining about the same thing I did last year. Last year it was the Legion Club. This year is Red Carpet Bar and Grill. When you guys grant a permit to move those big amplifiers out in their back parking lot, you got to remember that the back parking lot of the Red Carpet is surrounded on 3 sides by walls and buildings. It acts like a giant megaphone, and they blasted that music. They blasted the music into our resident neighborhood, and I have talked to a number of people in the neighborhood, and they're all pretty upset. They blasted that till 12:30 in the morning, and some of us get up early. I was up at 5 o'clock Sunday morning. I had to get up early. My neighbors are up at 6, 7 o'clock. They're all upset. So if you do it, maybe tell them that they have to turn those amplifiers down at 10 o'clock. Or just, I know they have a right to make a living with their business, but that right only extends to the 4 walls of the building. If they're not happy with that, build a bigger building, but don't blast it into the residences, because it's depriving us of the enjoyment of our property. And I guess that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for letting me talk, fellas. Appreciate it. You guys really do a good job.
Thanks, Dan.
And you guys are appreciated, every one of you
Thank you very much.
that are here.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellas.
Any other comments? All right, thank you. We'll move on then to our public hearings this evening. Actually, we're going to pass that up at this time because we have that set for 7 p.m. To begin. And because notices were sent out, we will move on to reports and presentations and come back at 7 o'clock for our public hearings. So we'll move right in then to the Police Department monthly report. Chief Fredericks.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
It's not on.
Is it off completely?
It seems quiet, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me turn it on.
Test, test, test.
Yeah, it's
Test.
coming through, but just a little.
Yeah.
I'll just talk loud.
He's turning it up.
So don't.
We got to make sure people can hear it on TV.
Test, test, test. There you go.
There we go.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
You want to continue, please?
All right, activity report for the month of June 2014. Some of the numbers we had 5 alarm calls. We had 31 assists for other agencies, and they're broke down. 1 was for Human Services, 12 in Melrose, 10 for the State Patrol, 5 for Stearns County, and 3 for Todd County. Kind of an outlandish number. We had 16 dog complaints, 4 running at large, 5 barking, 2 bites, just general complaints 3, and 2 in the impound. We had 10 driving with suspended or revoked license, 8 driving complaints. We had 12 medicals, 12 noise complaints. We had 8 accidents, 7 suspicious calls, 4 thefts, 6 unwanted persons. We had 250 verbal warnings, and for a total activity of 597. And when you look at it by month, we're down on calls 41, down on warnings 91, and down on total 132. And compared to 2013, we're down on calls 42, down on warnings 96, and down on total activity 138. That was about it for June. Just getting ready for Sinclair Lewis days now, and hopefully the weather holds out this year.
Brian, in regards to the noise complaints or violations, any of them have to do with the outside events at the bars downtown?
You know, I think we did have a couple. I'd have to get back to you on specifically for that area, what we had, and I can do that. Joe, do you remember, were you working that night?
Not the last one. One complaint when they had this behind the
Corner?
Back here.
corner, that public that before.
Yeah.
One on that one? Okay.
Yeah, I specifically don't remember for that, so I didn't think
Thank
we
you.
had too many, but. Yeah, I didn't remember having specifically for that dance.
Anybody have any other questions for Brian? I mean, as you stated, we got Sinclair Lewis Days this weekend. We have a parade that's Saturday night. You've got your
Fireworks.
officers and
Yep, we're
everything.
all hopefully set to go, yep. So,
Okay.
it'll
Great.
work.
Any questions?
No?
Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you.
Planning Commission report. I think Vicky's going to give that for Sarah this evening.
The Planning Commission met last Tuesday evening. It was their regular session of the month. The main item on their agenda was they held a public hearing regarding Chapter 95 of the City Code, which is nuisance ordinances. You do have an action on it later on in the evening, so I'll be able to explain it in more detail. It just kind of, it wasn't any new additions to the ordinance that they're recommending. They're just kind of clarifying a few things and tightening it up a little bit. So if we do have a complaint, we can help people out with that. They also had the May and June building reports, which is interesting to know that the dollar figure of the new construction is about doubled, but the number of permits has fallen in half. So that indicates that we're getting more larger projects, less of the, fix the windows and the new shingles, and more of the actual houses and commercial buildings. So that's good news for us. And then the other item they had for information is it's the time of the year where GTS Educational Events sets up a lot of different types of classes for planning commissioners, but they're also good for city councils to understand a little bit more about zoning. So we can, if you're interested in attending a class just to kind of get a better handle on the planning and zoning, certainly see Sarah and she'll get you lined up for that. That's all I have.
Vicky, could you send out to whether it's via email or letter, the May and June building reports for the council? It's
I can
not
send them
in
out
the
to you.
packet. Okay. Any other questions in regards to the planning commission? All right. Thank you, Vicky. Okay, moving on to C, the airport board report. Vicky?
The airport board met last week as well on their regular session, which Wednesday, July 9th. They had a couple of things on their agenda. They did confirm that final transfer of those entitlement funds to the city of Montevideo. They're beginning work on the 2015 pavement design report for the airport. They confirmed the fly-in events at Sinclair Lewis Days. That'll be from 8 to 1 at the airport this coming Sunday. And they'll have the breakfast, and Bolton Mank, who is our airport engineer, will have a tent out there, and there will be some airplanes and I believe a helicopter available for people to have rides, so that'll be a good event. In June, MnDOT was out and they did the inspection of the airport. We do not have the report back yet on that. They are still working on the drainage near the AD building. We have some water that stands kind of near the pump in the building, and it's a problem in the spring and the winter. And then we did learn that we had the engineer looking for a new credit card reader or pump, and we were looking at for a grant out there, and we would be able to qualify for a 60/40 state grant for a new pump out there and card reader. And then also the beacon grant option at 80/20, and 80% MnDOT, 20% the city. So these are some options we're looking at. And then also, at the time of the meeting, we heard that MnDOT may have a new pole for our windsock as an alternative to putting up a new pole. And now I have confirmation that they did locate one for us, so that will be no charge to the city for the new pole. And last year, we did all the LED uplights on a separate grant from MnDOT. So some of these things we're trying to get done without having to have them in the big project, so that our dollars, our entitlement dollars, can be reserved for that runway. So, and I have no action items tonight from the airport.
Did they have a timeline on the new pole as far as installation?
For the windsock?
Yeah.
John Schroeder at MnDOT is going to be driving or flying it up here sometime, and once he gets it here, then our staff will be putting it up.
Okay. Any other questions for Vicky in regards to the airport report? Keith, you got anything to add?
No, I was there.
Okay. Moving on. 7A. No, we're
I
gonna
think
move
we're
all
gonna
the way
go
down
all the way to G,
to,
yeah.
7F, huh? Action item 7F,
Yeah.
approve resolution 2014-61, awarding sale of forfeited vehicles, which is
Yeah,
page
fast forward 54.
54.
Okay. I did give you an amended staff report tonight because the bids ended during the week here on the two remaining vehicles. Actually, there's a third vehicle now, but we had the 2002 Ford Escape. We had a high bid of $3,075, and a 98 Jeep Cherokee of $285. And these are not going to back out because they have come in and paid. So that was, we were having trouble before with people pay and not paying. And so I do have for you Resolution 2014-61, accepting the bids for these excess vehicles.
All right, any questions? Is there a motion to approve resolution 2014-61, accepting the bids for excess vehicles and equipment as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keith and seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? They'll be picking them up, I'm assuming, soon?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, actually, they did already, I believe.
Oh,
When they pay, they pick up.
okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Okay, we'll move on to G, approve ordinance 747, amending the nuisance ordinance.
This is the public hearing that the Planning Commission held last Tuesday, and what they were looking at was trying to amend the ordinance in the nuisance so that we could add some definitions, clarify some intent, and so that there's a better understanding of what the application of that ordinance is. In the packet that you have, you'll see the yellow items are the ones that are being changed. If it's underlined, it's added, and if it's struck through, that's things that we've taken out. And I'll just briefly go through each one, and then you can have, if you have questions. One of the things that we had that people ask me about is, why do I have a red ring on my tree and the neighbor doesn't, and they're both dead? Well, our code right now deals with tree diseases, which is Dutch elm, oak wilt, and emerald ash borer. If you have a dead pine tree, maple tree, or whatever, we don't have the authority to ask you to remove it. So what this does is clarifies that any type of dead tree we can ask you to remove. On the nuisance parking and storage, there was a section in there that basically you couldn't have these, storing things like pipes, lumber, forms, things in your backyard that harbored rats, muskrats. We've had a beaver, we've had skunks, we have mosquitoes, and the ordinance before said it was okay if it was covered by a tarp. And the Planning Commission moved to strike that because covering it up may take it out of kind of your view, but it doesn't eliminate what it was trying to do, was to get rid of mosquitoes and rats and that type of thing. So that was their recommendation there. They did have, on the inoperable motor vehicles, there's one section in there that talks about it's okay if you're out of view from a street and you could have it behind a fence, but again, the very same reasonings of why we didn't want those abandoned vehicles was, as we did in the previous, covering it up with a fence or covering it up with a tarp, it didn't take care of the problem, so they also removed it there. The other thing was, these vehicles, a lot of times they're old, they have fluids, they're dripping, and it's an environmental issue. So they just wanted to kind of clarify that you're not supposed to have inoperable motor vehicles on your property. Then when you get down to recovery of cost, all that is it refers back to when we take out dead trees. This allows us to recover cost of removing dead trees if the city has to do it. And then we took out some language about junkyards, about nuisances, because the city doesn't allow junkyards at all, so they removed the language from it. And the final thing they changed was, if you recall, a year and a half ago, the state statute was amended to not call variances hardships, but practical difficulties. There was one section in the nuisance ordinance that still had the word hardship, so we changed that. So there's just a few items, but I think they'll give us a lot more, clarity when we're trying to enforce the ordinance. And I did lay that out for you in Ordinance 747, which is actually the ordinance you'd be adopting. The staff report was more explanation. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Any questions of staff? Of the changes, clarification? Again, I think it's just some language clarification and maybe some making it clearer for the residents as well as for staff to, when questions arise about some of the definitions. So, if there is no questions, is there a motion to approve ordinance 747, amending the nuisance ordinance as presented?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Warren and seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? I'll call the motion in. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, 1 against. Okay, moving on to H, approve resolution 2014-49, approving a property swap, which we switched from last meeting to this meeting.
Right, we had continued it from the last meetings because we wanted to talk to, he was going to go out and measure and see how much he wanted. But what this really is Matt Winter, he's the owner of property. It's Outlot A in Morningview Drive. It's at the end of Morningview Road, and I did give you a diagram to show you where that is. And then we own the property to the west of that, and actually it's referred to as the PUC property or the public utility property. And Mr. Winters had come to us and he wanted to buy a little strip of that, so when he puts his driveway up to that outlot, he can get around some mature trees and be on a better area for his driveway. And so I had suggested to him that perhaps we do a property swap, because at the end of Morningview Road, the road ends and it doesn't quite connect up with the PUC property, and that was that kind of greenish blue there. And so after we discussed it, we thought, well, maybe that would be a fair swap, but he's getting more land than we would get, so then he could be responsible for the cost of the transfer and the certificate of survey. So there wouldn't be costs out to us, but we would in the end own that connection, and then we would give up a 44-foot wide strip along his lot. So, and I know you have, the people in the audience don't have the map, but you have the map, you can kind of see what that swap would be. And I also included for you a copy of the flood zone map. You'll see why we have to be careful not to go too wide there, because if we ever were to construct a road, it would have to kind of go almost straight north and stay out of that light pink flood zone. And I think that's really all that, the gist of it. It's just that the city, we would deed to them that strip, he would deed back to us the other. He would provide us with a certificate of survey and pay for the title work and that type of thing to be done. So, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Matt's not here this evening, but is everything complete, or are we waiting on anything? Or?
No, we're just waiting for council approval at this point.
All right. Any questions? Any other questions? Is there a motion then to approve the resolution 2014-49, approving a property sale and acquisition with Matt Winters presented?
Yes, motion to approve.
Motion by David, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Warren. Any discussion? Call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Moving on to I, approve K-9 unit.
At the June 18th council meeting, the council directed the operations committee, we were going to review and make a recommendation on the potential establishment of a K-9 unit in the city. The committee met with Chief Fredericks and Officer Jensen. They reviewed the proposal, and I did provide you in the packet kind of a Q&A that they had given us at that meeting to kind of answer some questions and to give them some additional information. The purpose of a K-9 dog would be like a passive narcotics dog, and the chief and Officer Jensen will come up and answer any of your questions. And I did give you kind of the initial startup costs that they'd estimated about $7,000 by the time you buy the dog and do the training and get those types of things. The proposed funding is drug forfeiture funds that we currently have on hand. And they also have the proposal for the vehicle that we'd use would be the existing Crown Victoria, and how the officer times, et cetera, will work. But I'm going to let this turn it over to them, and they can kind of make a little presentation, and then you can ask questions of them.
All right. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Like I say, and we've talked to the operations committee and spoke to them. Some of our, what we're looking at is trying to add to our department another tool, basically for drug enforcement that we've noticed has increased in town a little bit. It's just another angle to work it, I think, that would be very valuable and also a good benefit to the community, I think, as far as, you know, being together with them and having them come and visit with us. And I just think it's a good tool, and I hope you read the packet over a little bit, and just, if you have any questions, just ask, please. Go
Okay,
ahead.
there was some recent additional stuff from the packet, I think that was mailed out, or additional information of pictures. You guys have those pictures of the equipment
Yeah.
with you? And then you also have been working with another department to get the kennel and the equipment for the car. I believe, Joe, you and I have had a chance to speak about it as well. Can you give an update on where that's at and what, I mean, we have the equipment today. It will work for our Crown that we have based on,
Yep, on Monday they called and said it was ready, and said come pick it up. So Monday I went to Elk River, picked it up. It's a American aluminum kennel, brand new. It's a $3,500 kennel, and he had it back of his 2010 Crown Victoria. It would fit perfectly in the back of our 2011.
and Brian, the current vehicle that we'd be looking at is our third vehicle, is what I guess I would call it, that one that,
Yep, Crown Vic.
the Crown Vic, and I know we've been kind of replacing our vehicles with leased vehicles the last several times, and we have 2 new vehicles. What happens if that Crown Vic is not available or in repair or whatever? Then we just don't have the dog with us that night, or what's the backup plan if and when? I mean, we're talking about a vehicle that we've taken semi out of service, although we do use it if
Right.
need be.
Yeah, and that would be the plan. We would have to just exit the K-9 portion for that day or whenever that other vehicles would be down, so we could implement and use that vehicle.
Because that vehicle will become a very active vehicle again based on the amount of time that Joey, because he will be handling the handler of this K-9. So when he's on, he's going to have that vehicle.
Correct.
And so now our 2 new vehicles, you almost take a new vehicle and put it into a backup. I just want to make sure we understand, you know what I mean, what we're
Right.
doing. And I'm fully supportive of the K-9 plan. I just want to make sure as we go forward,
Yep.
what we're utilizing and where we're spending our resources on vehicles. And now you take a new vehicle that we just acquired and you make that now a vehicle that's very, very seldom used. Once we start that rotation going forward, we have to keep that in consideration. I would anticipate when you go into this K-9 venture like we're going, I don't want to say it's permanent, but it's a kind of a long-term commitment because
It's a very
these dogs are in service for how long? 9?
Up to anywhere from 8 to 12 years.
8 to 12 years.
Health of the dog.
Okay. And this particular dog is a narcotics dog, based on our conversation, Joey. At one time, there was discussion, I think it's even in your notes, about a rescue, search and rescue dog. I'll call that a bloodhound, just for simplicity terms. This is not that. This will only be a narcotics.
Right, after talking about our options and stuff, the county's got a pretty good tracking dog, 2 big bloodhounds.
Okay.
Like we've talked in the past too, if it came down to it, tracking dog is something that you can wait that 45 minutes for them to get here.
Okay.
It's just something that,
The necessity wouldn't be there for that portion of a dog, to have that.
And then one other question, and I don't mean to speak on for everybody, but these are questions that I had I think would be interesting to the public. This canine unit will travel with you, obviously, on a regular basis, but it's very approachable by the general public. Is that not correct? It's not a vicious dog. It's not a attack dog by any sorts. Are you planning on utilizing it in the schools and in the general public, or what is your
yep, it's
plan?
it'll be a passive dog. Like I said, it'll be a dog I feel comfortable at home with my 3-year-old and 9-month-old. But it'll be a dog that we can bring to the schools. The school right now is paying for a couple times a year for a private company to come in to run their dogs. That's something that they won't have to pay for anymore. Dog will bring to daycares. Dog will bring down to, for example, Kid Fest down the park tonight. Dog will bring down there. Kids can pet it. Yeah, very passive, very friendly dog.
Okay.
A lot of people think when they think of police dog, they think of the shepherd aggressive bite dog.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically a hunting dog, except for birds, he's gonna hunt for their goat.
Yep. And I think one of the other things to note is there's not a tremendous amount of narcotics canine units in the area, I believe is what you had told me. And we have a very active community traffic-wise due to the fact of I-94, Highway 71, and State Highway 28. So tremendous amount of traffic, and I think if we've all looked at Brian's reports over the years, and also have talked with Janelle, gives us her annual reports as well, we know that narcotics and drugs and those types of things are traveling through our community just solely based on our location, just because of where we're at, which is very understandable. And then having this type of additional resource would allow us to address those types of concerns timely and probably have significant more success in helping eliminate that type of activity going forward. Is that a fair statement?
Yep, correct.
Is there any other questions from the council?
Sorry I didn't get to speak to you guys one-on-one, but I'm all for the program. I don't have a problem with it. One question I do have is there a chance that our mutual aid with other towns is going to go up because they know we have that K-9 unit now and could increase our overtime costs as far as budget?
And is there a way to get reimbursed for that time if they ask directly for a K-9? Is that outside of our mutual aid agreement, or is it part of it?
Right.
I think we got to use common sense there. We're not going to be traveling to St. Cloud or, far away. It'd be the very local area. State Patrol, Stearns County on a traffic stop just outside of town. Melrose maybe the farthest. Using it in a close proximity to Sauk Center. And I think they'd use, Officer Jensen would use good judgment when it comes to that.
Preferably, most of those outside agencies calling would be hopefully when I'm working. If it was when I'm off, let them all know that if I'm off and you need to call me, it better be something big.
Well,
Significant than us.
and the reason why I asked that is, other towns probably might use this, but, we're already going to Melrose 12 to 15 times a month. Is that going to double because all of a sudden they know we have the dog and they might have issues over there too? That's what my concern is. We're supplying a service, but we're not getting anything other than the increase in budget.
And we've talked about with Officer Jensen compensating a shift. If he does get called out, for a shift to assist someone, we could probably compensate it on an up-and-coming shift, to come in, at a different time to compensate for that.
Okay.
That would work.
I think it's, and I agree with, Councilmember stone in regards to really managing the outside resource, because I truly think we will have a very successful plan and a very successful canine, especially knowing Officer Jensen and knowing his passion for this project and having the opportunity to look already and listen to what dogs they've been looking at. And it's not just in any old dog off the street. This person that we're working with is professional in the country of finding very quality canine units. So from that perspective, I would agree, Warren, you're probably going to get some requests, and I think we'll have to manage it. And if it becomes an issue where it appears to be expanding upon the budget, we're going to have to reevaluate how we do our mutual aid in regards to it.
Yeah.
So, any other questions or comments?
No.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the implementation of the canine unit and development of final canine policy as presented?
So move.
Motion by Warren, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? We'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Thank you.
Council.
Get that dog.
All right. Well, before we go into our unfinished, we're going to go back up into our action items, and we're going to go right back to our public hearings this evening, which were scheduled to start at 7. So at this time, I will, what will I do? Suspend? And I will recess the regular meeting, and I will open the public hearing. And we have a public hearing before us this evening, which involves 5 properties in the city that are considered hazardous under the Hazardous Building Act. They are properties, and I'm going to list all 5 properties, and I'm not going to, then I won't have to go through all of the procedure each time. Is that okay, Vicki? Property number 1 is the Stein property at 508 2nd Street South. Property number 2 is the Dubrava property at 200 2nd Street South. Property number 3 is the Hoppy property at 322 Birch Street South. Property 4 is Arns at 625 Getty. Property 5 is the Boyer property at 331 Maple. It is our intention that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. If you wish to speak regarding any of the requests, please sign in on the sign-up sheet at the back of the room. If you haven't done so, you could do that at this time. And we'll use the following procedure. Presentation by staff followed by questions of staff. Tonight, staff will be presented by our City Attorney, Tom Mayer. Owner presentation or additions followed by questions of owner. Public input. At that time, please raise your hand when recognized by myself. Approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. State your comments and positions. No one will be allowed to speak a second time until everyone has had a chance to be heard. First, we'll hear questions for clarification. Second, public in favor of the proposal. And third, public speaking against the proposal. After everyone who wishes to speak has had the opportunity to be heard, the public hearing will be closed. After closure of the public hearing, the council will deliberate and take action as appropriate. We will take action on each resolution separately. Members of the audience do not participate in the council's discussion unless a majority of the council concedes to hear additional information or questions. This hearing is now in session. Tom?
Good evening, council members. My name is Tom Mayer. I'm a local attorney in the city. I have just a few general comments, I think, before we start. I think the public should realize that the Minnesota legislature has given cities the authority to monitor and address hazardous buildings or substandard properties within their corporate limits. It's not that we want to take anybody's property, but we do have the right and an obligation when a lot of neighbors start to complain to address some of these issues. Minnesota statute describes a hazardous building or property as one which, because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, physical damage, unsanitary condition, or abandonment, constitutes a fire hazard or a hazard to public safety or health. We've identified these properties in town. There are several. We're going to deal with 5 this evening. The public should be aware that there are some additional properties we're still working on. The 5 this evening that have been identified, we've approached the owners, and they've graciously given us consent to enter each property and to inspect the property. Having done that, we secured an inspection report from the 3 inspectors, the building inspector, chief of police, and the fire chief. Each reviewed each premises. So we're here tonight to have a hearing to give the owners an opportunity to respond to those reports. You should understand, with respect to each property, I've mailed each of the property owners a copy of the report. I've sent them a copy of the draft resolution or order, and I would again like to emphasize that is a draft, so that if additional changes or amendments need to be made, you can do that. In other words, this isn't a cut and dried thing here. If you decide you want to make some amendments to that, feel free to do so. Once we act on the final resolution, then that will be served on the property owners, and that service will be similar to the commencement of a lawsuit. It'll probably be served by a police officer, sheriff, or perhaps a private service processor. That order will then give that property owner certain time frames in which they have to do certain things. Either make repairs, or in some instances, we're probably going to ask that the property be raised and that the buildings be demolished and that the foundations be removed and clean fill be replaced, etc., those sort of things. The order will be served, and then the property owner will have a few options. There's probably a few more than 3, but they can do the work, which would be great. They could waive their right to do the work and ask that we do the work, or one of our agents do the work on behalf of the city. If they do that, the cost then would be especially assessed against the property and would become payable with their real estate taxes. The other option would be, once they receive the order, they could request that we proceed to district court, that the order be contested in that court, and they would have 20 days from the date they receive our order to file an answer and to proceed in that fashion. In addition to the report and the proposed resolution, I've also sent each property owner a consent to enter the property and to raise the structures. So that is available to them. I haven't received any signed consent forms back to them. This evening, we are going to treat each parcel separately, and I want to do that so that we have a record. I'm going to be introducing some things this evening, so this might become repetitive after a while, and you're going to say, why is he doing this? He just did it with the last property. But we need to do it for each property. And I want to introduce these documents so that if it is contested and we have to move to district court, that some of this will be admissible, actually probably without further testimony by the preparers, as public records. Okay. With that, the first property is one that's owned. The owner of record is a Kathleen M. Stein. The property is at 508 2nd Street South. I've had some conversations with Kathleen's daughter, Becky Stein, and I believe she's in the audience this evening, so she probably will be speaking to you later. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the individual reports. You have those. I think it's clear from the reports that this property is in bad shape. As a matter of fact, this property was called to our attention by the owner and by her daughter. And the description she gave me was, be careful when you enter the property. There are a lot of problems. So I believe the inspectors were careful when they did enter. If you look at the actual report, I think it's very clear that the 3 inspectors reached a consensus that this property had to be demolished or raised. This property is vacant and has been vacant for quite a long period of time. I believe the owner of record is an absentee owner, and I don't think we can consider that as a determining factor in making our decision, but I think sometimes it is important. They don't realize maybe the condition of the property, and there aren't any neighbors that are complaining directly to them because they're not present in the community. If you look, and I'm going to be introducing several documents. One of them is the real estate tax records for this property. Excuse me for... And when you look at the most recent real estate tax statement, this particular property has a value of $21,100. And the land is worth $11,900. And the building, according to the assessor here, is $7,200. But the total is $21,100. Now that's for the lot and the property in the city of Sauk Center. So they're not assigning a lot of value to the building, obviously. Most of it is in the land. And based on the report I'm seeing here, I'm not sure the building is even worth $7,200 from the report. So with that in mind, I think I'll just turn it over and you can take other testimony.
Okay. Tom, for clarification, you used the term raised on several times. Could you clarify for the public and for us what the term raised?
Well, raising the property would be bringing somebody in, demolishing the structure, removing it from the premises, and perhaps taking out the foundation, removing that from the premises, and then replacing it with clean fill.
Okay.
So what you would be left with would just be a vacant lot.
The word raised and demolished are same.
Pretty much similar, yes.
Very much. Thank you.
Oh, one other thing before I do leave. I have copies of all the reports in my file, and I want those to be part of the record.
Okay.
So I'm going to introduce those.
Give those to Vicki, please.
And I also have a copy for Ms. Stein that she could give to her mother.
All right, thank you. All right, does the council have any questions for Tom before we move into the public input?
No.
No, all right. At this time, then, we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on behalf of the Stein property? You want to stand up, place your, state your name and address, please.
I'm Becky Stein, and I live at 6329 Wildwood Way, Monticello.
Okay.
And the zip there is 55362.
Okay.
And I called Tom because I found out that, well, it all started back in October. My mom...
Can you pull the
Sorry.
mic down,
Yep.
please?
We found out that mom is diabetic, and she had to have her toe amputated, so that's what started the whole thing. When she was in the hospital, I found out she was back taxes on the property, and when I got in there, realized that it was full of stuff because she was hoarding, and that the building is just completely a lost cause, in my opinion. And her county worker was the one who suggested calling the city and finding out about having it condemned, because she's on county assistance. She's only got about $2,000 in her retirement account. That's the only asset that she's got, is the building. And obviously you guys can see what it is as far as assets. So I had called basically to see if we could sign it over to the city and maybe just do that for the back taxes. I don't know if that's possible because I've never had property and I am a renter, so I don't know. And
Okay.
that's about what I've got.
All right, thank you. I don't have any questions. You can. Any other people wish to speak, either in favor or in opposition of the public hearing? Is it in regard to the Stein property? And I will go through all the public input first, and then Tom will have you come back up and maybe answer any of those comments or questions. Anybody else? I have the processes to do this 3 times to ask anybody to be heard, so I will go through the proper process. Second time anybody wish to be heard on the Stein property, and again a third. Hearing none, then we will move forward. Tom, you want to come back up?
I do have a report from an abstractor, and it does indicate that the real estate taxes are delinquent for the last 3 years, which is also a fairly substantial sum. Just a couple of questions. Becky, would your mother be opposed, do you think, to signing some sort of a consent order authorizing the city to tear the property down? Okay, well, you understand that if the city did that, well, first of all, I would send your mother a consent order to do that, so she doesn't have to make a decision this evening. Wouldn't ask you to do that. But if that does happen, then, and if you authorize the city to do that work, the city or their agents would do the work, and then it would be specially assessed against the property. Now, if you're not paying the real estate taxes, you may well lose the property. And you understand that. Okay. And we've also had some, I believe, some discussions about possibly deeding that to the city or whatever. Discussions at this point, nothing firm. So, nothing further.
All right, thank you. So at this time, Tom, for clarification and so we go through the correct process, would you, are you looking for us to do action on each property, or do you want to go through the public input on each property? How do you want us to handle the next step?
I think I would go through all the public input and then after that address each one individually.
Very good.
In terms
We'll do
of your
that through
action.
our action.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to move in then to the Dubrava property at 200 2nd Street South, which is again in your orange packet that was presented, your information. And again, we will have Tom come up and do his presentation on this parcel.
This is the property at 200 2nd Street South in the city of Sauk Center. According to the real estate records, the owner of record is a Michael Dubrava, and I believe he's also present this evening and probably will be meeting with you later. Again, I would just ask you to take notice of all the records and the reports that were provided to you. Again, we have pretty much of a consensus here that the property is in bad shape, that the costs to remedy the property would far exceed its value, and that it probably would not be prudent to spend a lot of money repairing the property. However, as I looked at the report, there wasn't a real definitive statement by the inspector that it had to be raised. So in my proposed resolution and order, I indicated that if the property owner wanted to make all the repairs that were suggested in the report, that he would have 45 days to do so. Now, that's not a lot of time, admittedly, but 45 days to complete that. And if he did not, then the property would be raised again, and either he could do that work, or if he did not do it, then we could do it for him, or our agent could do it for him and specially assess it against the property. The real estate records in this instance show that the Dubrava property has an estimated market value of $26,300. The lot is assessed at valued at $16,400, and the structure is valued at $9,900. And again, if you look at the report, the cost of doing all the repairs is, I think, to do it properly, according to the building inspector, $120,000. I mean, even if it cost half of that amount, that's still twice the value of that property as it currently exists. I think, again, if you look at the report, the consensus is that this property constitutes a bit of a health hazard because of its condition, and safety hazards also, which is kind of the basis for describing it as a hazardous building within our city. I have nothing further. Oh, excuse me, I do. I also want to introduce a complete copy of my file, all the correspondence, all the reports, et cetera, and I'll provide a copy to Mr. Dubrava.
All right. Any questions of Tom in regards to this particular property? Tom, I will say I reviewed these properties as well in regards to the report, and I would agree, and your recommendation also in your action item was to give the 45 days to fix based on, I had noted in my same comments that there wasn't a clear description of it needed to be being raised. However, I should note that all of the inspections felt there was a significant safety issue, public safety and health and fire hazard. So, however, not a specific saying of demolition or raising. So thank you for that clarification. So we will then take public input. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on behalf of the Brava property?
I'm Mike DeBrava. I own the property at 200 2nd Street South. I live in Apple Valley, Minnesota, so I live a little ways away. I agree that the house is not worth fixing. I approached the bank that I have the mortgage at, and they feel that the value of the property is worth more with the house there than with it out. I've already asked to tear it down, but they said they won't let me tear it down unless I have a house to put back on it, and I can't afford to do either. So I would be gladly to tear it down as long as I can afford it, but the 45 days, with me being in the cities, I can't afford to pay somebody else to do it. But I have the equipment and I can do it myself. Just the 45 days is, I can't do the 45 days, or the 30 days for the, whatever, for the demolition. I have somebody that's using the garage, so I don't want to tear the garage down, but I would like to eventually put a house back on the property, but I don't know where my options are. I want to know what my options are. According to the new new guidelines, that's too close to the street right now, and it covers more than 35% of the property, from what I understood, that it can't cover, the buildings can't cover more than 35%. I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't read them recently, but when I looked into fixing the house or rebuilding or replacing the house, that was what it was. I don't know if there's a process I need to go to build a new house there or put a new house, or if I can put a older house that's been fixed. That house is not, it's not on a foundation, it's sitting on the dirt. It's old house, it's my grandpa's old house. I'd like to keep the property, but I would like to demolition the house myself, but I have to get what the bank wants to know what you guys want to do right now. That's where it's sitting. And if I have to demolition it, I may have to ask the bank for help in financing. I need to do whatever is the cheapest as far as money-wise, as far as getting it. I have no problem tearing it down. I realize the house is, I'm just too far away to do the maintenance on it myself. Because it's a rental property, I'm under the understanding I can't do the construction work on it myself. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Where I live, you can't. So if I could do the construction costs myself, I may look into that option. But I'm not, at this point, I have no plans in fixing the house. I would rather tear it down, but I'm the bank is kind of holding me up on that. They would rather have the house replaced as soon as the house is demolitioned. Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out what my options are. Obviously, I want to keep the shed or the garage that's on it. I even looked into possibly selling the property to the neighbor, which needs some, that's a whole nother issue. We won't worry about that right now. So, yeah, just basically looking for my options, and if you guys allow me to tear it down, if I can get it through the bank, I'd need more time than 45 days, just because I live so far away, and I wouldn't be able to afford to have somebody else do it. So,
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Thank you for your comments. Again, as the council knows through all our normal public hearings, we don't usually have a lot of dialogue back and forth other than with staff, and then we will have complete discussion on each property as we go through the resolutions while we take action. So that's why you do not hear a lot of feedback. This is a comment, this is public comment time. So staff, Tom, do you want to go back up and share any additional comments?
I did get a owners and encumbrance report concerning the status of the title, and Mr. Dubrava does have a mortgage with Central Minnesota Credit Union. They were sent a letter back in February. Once your order issues, they will also be served with a copy of that order. And I can understand maybe their reluctance to have the residence demolished, but perhaps once they see the condition, the report, and perhaps once they see the order that you've issued, they might rethink their position and maybe allow Mr. Dubrava to do it himself. As far as the garage is concerned, the report really doesn't discuss the garage very much, and if, I guess that's not a livable residence or anything like that, I'm sure that probably could stay. So if we had to, we could amend the order accordingly to allow that to stay.
So we had no inspection at all of the garage on the facility. Is it separate?
I don't think they did.
It's a separate building, right?
It is. It's a detached.
Right.
I'm not sure if you can answer this question or want to, and you wouldn't have to. I noticed that the original principal balance on that loan was about $70,000, and it was back in August of 2003. What's the balance owing on that? Could you share that? I think it's around 45. 45? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, if council has no other questions in regards to the Dubrava property, we'll move into the Hoppy property next.
Did you ask 3 times for?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not. Thank you.
Just making sure.
For the record, I need to ask my 3 times for public input. So is there anybody else who wishes to speak on behalf of the Dubrava property? And the 3rd time? All right, we'll move into the Hoppy property. Thank you.
Yep.
Next property, the owner of record is Jessica J. Hoppy. Property is at 332 Birch Street North in Sauk Center. And again, you have copies of the inspection report by the 3 inspectors. Again, I think there's a consensus that this property is in very poor condition to the point where, the ceilings are falling down, and it's been severely damaged by water and mold and debris and whatever. There's also a consensus by the inspectors that it does constitute a health and safety hazard, and I think that's important. As with the other properties, I did look at the real estate tax records also. This particular property has an estimated market value of $31,200. The land is assessed or valued at $22,000, and the structures, and the structure is kind of a garage or a shed and a mobile home that's kind of on a block foundation, I believe. That has a value of $9,200. So again, you can see that for the most part, the lot is the valuable item here, and the improvements are not really being too highly valued by the assessor's office. So again, constitutes a health and safety hazard. All of the information has been provided to the property owner. Evidently, I don't believe she's here this evening to comment. And the resolution, proposed resolution in order would be to, again, raise or demolish the property. And lastly, again, for the record, I'm going to provide the city administrator with copies of all my correspondence, orders, etc., and I will mail a copy to Jessica.
Does council have any questions in regards to the Hoppy property? Hearing none, we'll take public input. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on behalf of the public hearing for the Jessica Hoppy property this evening? Anybody wish to be heard in regards to the Hoppy property? Third time, anybody wish to be heard? Seeing Jessica not here and not having any comments, we will move on then to the Arns property at 625 Getty.
We're referring to this as the Arns property, but the actual owner of record is EMA Enterprises Incorporated. I believe Mr. Arns is probably the owner of the stock of that corporation, but that is the owner of record. The property, again, at 625 Getty Street within the city of Sauk Center. This property, I think, is also vacant. Probably until about the last year, it was used as rental property. I've had some discussions with Mr. Arns. He was a little reluctant to authorize the entering and inspection of the property, but ultimately he did. He informed me that the tenants that were in the property prior to its becoming vacant did not take very good care of the place, and that I should not expect it to be in pristine condition. And I think that the report verifies that. This is a very old property. And again, I think if you'll look at the report, there's a consensus by all three inspectors that this property cannot be remediated, cannot be fixed. The cost to do so would be excessive. If you were going to spend that kind of money on a property, certainly you would build new. You would not stick that kind of money into it. I haven't looked at the real estate record yet, but let me see if I can find that quickly for valuations. This particular property for 2014 valuation, the estimated market value was $39,600. The land value, $20,500, and the improvements were valued at $19,100. And that value, as I look at it, has remained pretty constant for the last 4 or 5 years. Again, the report indicates that because of the condition, that the property constitutes a health hazard. Without getting into specifics of the report, I don't think anybody could probably live in there, from what I read. And it's just general condition. It's a health and safety hazard. And I think, again, the recommendation is that it be raised. And I again would offer, as part of our record, a complete copy of my file, correspondence, reports, orders, etc. And I'm not sure if there's anyone in the audience relative to this property, but if there is not, I will send a copy to Mr. Arns also.
Okay. Any questions for Tom in regards to this property? Thank you, Tom, and I will also note that in regards to not only your comments, but all three had a significant fire hazard condition on this property as well as a health and safety, and a tremendous report here of that everybody had a chance to see about the current conditions. So thank you for your comments. We'll now open this up for public input. Is there anybody here who's here to speak on behalf of the, and I will not call this the Arns property because I don't believe that's correct. It's the EMA Enterprises Incorporated property at 625 Getty Street. Anybody here wish to speak on behalf of that property? Third time, anybody wish to speak? Okay, hearing none. We'll then move on to our final property, which is property number 5. The Boyer property at 331 Maple.
As you said, Mayor, the property is owned by a Richard D. Boyer, and I believe he's present this evening. The street address of the property is 331 Maple Street in the city of Sauk Center. This property, until I don't know how many years ago, was perhaps a duplex or a triplex, I'm not sure, but it's a very old residential property. According to the report, it's basically been demolished on the inside. That pretty much all that's left are, I believe, the stud walls. There are some floors. They talked about the tile, and you've probably driven by it. You'll note that there are several windows that were open. We did have to secure an order or a consent to secure the property as vacant and unsecured, but the owner did cooperate with that, and we were able to get that done. The owner also gave us the right to enter and to do our inspection, and of course that's been completed, and you now have that in front of you. Again, the consensus of the 3 inspectors, particularly the building inspector, would be that this property needs to be raised, that there is no way that this could be corrected or remedied, particularly if you would follow all the code regulations and spend all the money necessary to bring it into compliance. The estimated cost of doing so, and this is again a very large building, so I think his estimated cost reflects that. Projected cost to remedy everything to code would be $186,000. That's the estimate. And again, I think it wouldn't be prudent to put that kind of money into a property like that. You would, if you were going to build something at that cost, you would build new. The tax values on this particular piece of property are current total estimated market value is $39,600. And this is, well, it says the west half of lots 11 and 12. I thought it was 2 lots, but it's a large lot at any rate. The value of the land, $21,300, and the improvement is valued at $18,300. And it's interesting that as I look back at 2011 values, the value then was $77,600. The land was $21,300, so that stayed consistent. The building was worth $56,300. So some 3 years later, the building value went from $56,300 to $18,300. Now, perhaps Mr. Boyer asked the assessor to lower that. And if he did, that is probably an indication that he himself knows that the building is not worth a large value. Again, the reports, I think, are consistent that the property needs to be demolished, constituting a health and safety fire hazard. And again, as with the other properties, I'm going to provide a copy of my file, records, and reports to the city administrator, and I will provide a copy to Mr. Boyer as well.
Any questions? Again, this report has been presented to you. This home has been a part of the community for many, many years. On the corner there is an apartment facility, I believe, as Mr. Mayor has noted. I personally walk by there every week. Noticed that, you know, a lot of windows, and there's been a lot of, it's pretty wide open. It's very much wide open. And so I can understand the hazards and the safety concerns as noted in the report. So with that, I will open up for public comment. Anybody wish to speak? Please stand to the mic and state your name and address, please.
Rick Boyer, 331 Maple Street. Yep, I won't contest that the house needs to be demoed, and it was open for a long period of time. We had hired people to demo the house for us, and they had left it in unruly shape, to say the least. I'm sure, as you said, you've walked by there many times. But we did go up there, so all the pictures that you see, we cleaned up the entire area. I'm sure you've noticed since then. I boarded up all the walls in the meantime. So right now, all we're concerned about is just getting the bids, having the time to get the bids and find the contractors to do the work. The 45 days, I think, is a little unreasonable, but I guess if people could, if we could have a little extended time, possibly to make a date as of early spring to have the contractors, lined up to do the work, that'd be great.
Lined up to do the work.
As far as demoing the home.
Demoing.
Doing a tear down, yep. We had paid people to go in there and gut it out to see what kind of real condition it was in, and of course, as you can see, it's, like Tom was saying, it really wouldn't be cost effective to put that kind of money into an older home like that.
Okay. Any council have any questions?
Mm-mm.
Any other comments?
Nope.
No? All right, thank you. With that, is there any other public comments in regards to the property at 331 Maple? And the third time, any other comments? Hearing none. Staff, do you have any other comments in regards to this public hearing presented to us this evening before I close the public hearing and reconvene our regular scheduled meeting? With that, I will close the public hearing and I will reconvene the regular meeting. Our agenda takes us back then to action item 7A tonight, which is the beginning of the discussion and the action on each one of the parcels that was just presented to us. We have 5 separate resolutions, resolution 56 through 60 that are presented, and we will take each resolution separate, as I stated. And Vicki, if you want to go ahead and start the action, I would appreciate it.
The first resolution you have in front of you is Resolution 2014-56. That is a resolution ordering the repair and/or raising of a hazardous building at 508 2nd Street South, Sauk Center. That is the Stein property that we talked about earlier. This resolution, if you look through all the numbers, what it does is it puts the findings in there. They're the findings of the report that you received earlier. These resolutions were prepared by the city attorney. In the end, you'll see that what you're looking right now in what the council would ask to be done is that you'd ask for these corrections or demolition. So you kind of read what there, but you do have the recommendation of the building inspector that it be raised and demolished.
Okay,
And
Vicki,
then-
I'm sorry. Go
Did you have any, I don't want to read the whole resolution,
No.
you've all had them in advance, and maybe the city attorney would prefer that more detail goes into it, I'm not sure for the record.
All right. So as we go through these resolutions, I would like to, be able to get our questions answered in regards to each property, but maybe for clarification for me to understand this particular parcel, people there sounds to be several options. Obviously, we all know that there's something's got to be done. The owners realize that as well. They're looking at potentially deeding it over. Tom or Vicki, what will be the steps involved after we take this action? Can we continue with the discussion to transfer ownership, the deed, what happens if we move forward just this in regards to getting them some answers about the next steps?
Do you have any other questions, first of all, before you act for?
I have no questions in regards to the parcel itself, other than I need to understand.
Then I think the resolution, I think Vicki is correct. What I've done is I've just summarized and incorporated by reference the report in here, everything that needed to be done.
Okay?
This basically describes what your findings are. These are
Yes.
findings of fact.
Correct.
Okay? And I restated what was in the report, pretty much. This particular one, with respect to the Stein property, indicates it has to be raised,
That's correct.
and 30 days to do that. Okay, so what happens now is you will issue your order.
Yes.
Tomorrow or the next day, I'll come over here and get a certified copy of that document, and then I will serve that upon Mrs. Stein.
Yes.
I'll probably just mail it to her and ask her to sign a consent of service form, because they've been very cooperative.
Right.
But if they do not consent to service, then I will have it served on them. Then they will have, from the date, 30 days to get that job done. And I don't know if they're going to get it done.
Okay.
They also have, from the date they get served, 20 days to file an answer to contest this matter in
Yes.
district court. So after this also, I will contact these property owners individually and ask them if they're willing to sign a consent form that would allow us, the city, or agents of the city, to do the work and to specially assess that against the property.
Okay. You answered my question. Thank
Okay.
you. Is there any other questions? We'll talk when your property comes up. Hearing no other questions, is there a motion to approve Resolution 2014-56, ordering and the repair and/or raising of a hazardous building located at 508 2nd Street South, Sauk Center, Minnesota, as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Dave, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Warren. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Thank you. Moving on then to 7B. Approve Resolution 2014-57, declaring property hazardous. Okay.
Again, this is the property at 200 2nd Street South. This is a Dubrava property that he spoke to you earlier. Again, the resolution was prepared by the city attorney, and it recaps the report of all of your findings and also what needs to be done. And I understand that his intent or his desire is to have the building demolished. And we had given him 45 days in the resolution to make the repairs, or 30 day, I guess the 30 days completion, I should say. And so if you have any further details on that, as far as the city attorney working with him or with his bank or whatever, that would follow after. What this is your resolution stating this needs to be done.
Okay. I have a couple questions in regards to this parcel before we move it forward. The garage is separate, it's a whole separate item, it's not part of this
Correct. The garage was not included in the inspection, and it was not included as part of the complaint. It's separate from the building and away from the building.
Very good. All right. If, and Tom noted this in the very beginning, if we felt there was any changes to the resolutions as presented, we could make them or have discussions about them.
Correct.
This particular parcel, the property owner is willing to demolish it, but again, doesn't sure that there's enough time. When do we have that, when would we make that determination if we should adjust the time? Is that after things are served and discussions are had, or is that now?
Perhaps.
I'm sorry, Tom, to bring these up, but these are
No, that's fine.
important
Perhaps for
questions.
clarification, the way I wrote the report is he had 45 days to make the repairs. Then he got an additional 30 days
Right.
to raise the property.
Yes, he has
So-
75 days.
He's
to
got
raise the
75
property.
days. That's quite a lengthy period of time.
Yep, I just needed clarification.
And I will have discussions with the bank also after our meeting this evening.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Anybody have any questions?
One of the concerns that I've got is I know the property owner stated that he'd like to do the tearing down himself and demolish it himself, which I don't have a problem with if he can get it done. The only thing is there any asbestos in the building or anything that we know of there it's going to be properly disposed of? Where if they bring in a contractor, they got to follow the normal demolition procedures and do the testing and stuff like that. I don't mind someone doing it themselves. I just want to make sure if there is a situation there that it's demolished or taken care of in the proper way without causing more health issues to the people around them as it's being tore down.
We have a permit requirement for demolition, don't we? There must be something in there. If you're going to demolish a structure, you're supposed to get a permit for it.
Right, you do get it. We do issue a demolition permit.
Right.
And that includes things such as proper disconnection from city utilities and that type of thing as well.
Does it include things like asbestos then? Is that something that, you
It
know?
just, it says that the owner is taking responsibility to properly dispose of, but it doesn't call out what each of the items are.
Okay. But I mean, the state probably has rules on that sort of thing.
The
We don't.
asbestos rules are laid out by state statute.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
The order also talks about the work being completed in compliance with all applicable codes and regulations. So
Okay.
That's part of the order.
All right. Okay.
All right. Any other clarification needed? You want to, you have additional comments you want to make? Okay. Understandable, thank you. Okay, hearing that and hearing the comments of staff recommendations, what's the wishes of the council? Well, we have a recommendation from staff to approve resolution 2014-57, ordering the repair and/or raising of a hazardous building located at 200 2nd Street South, Sauk Center, Minnesota. Anybody wish to entertain that motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve that resolution.
Motion by Keith, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. All right. Moving on to C. And as we go through these, again, this starts the clocks of all of the parcels and the decisions that we make. If there is additional discussion as we go forward, I'm sure the attorney, Tom Mayer, will have that discussion with the applicants.
Right.
In regards to property owners. Moving on to 7C is approve resolution 2014-58 declaring property hazardous at 320 322 Birch Street North, the Hoppy property.
And this resolution as well lays out all the things that it was to be repaired, but the determination was it was beyond repair. It was an old mobile home and that it should be just removed and raised and demolished. And I did have some preliminary conversations with her that was her intent some time ago, so and the city attorney has been corresponding with her since that time. We haven't had her here tonight, but I think this one is the one that they were very sure that it just needed to be demolished.
All right. Any questions of staff? As Vicki stated, the resolution clearly states, as well as the report, the condition of this particular property, which has been in a very difficult condition for a very long time. And it's not just the specific trailer, but the building and everything attached to it is extremely tough shape. So with that, I would ask the council to approve resolution 2014-58, ordering the repair and/or raising of a hazardous building located at 322 Birch Street north of Sauk Center, Minnesota.
So move.
Motion by Warren, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? I will call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Okay, we'll be moving on to D. Action item 7D is approved resolution 2014-59, ordering, excuse me, declaring the property hazardous at the Arns facility. EMA. Sorry.
It's actually both. Arns is the name of the person, but EMA is the name that is the title company that owns the title to the building.
Okay.
This is the property at 625 Getty Street in Sauk Center, and the recommendation of the building official on this was that the building be condemned and the structures and their foundations be demolished and raised, and due to the building not being repaired over the years. And you had the testimony received earlier. You will see all the different items that would need to be repaired if it was to do so, and because of the cost of that, that's where the recommendation came for it to be demolished. And we did not hear testimony from the owner on this one. There was no participation in this meeting.
So we had no comments from the owner at all in regards?
We have had, the attorney has had conversations with them over a period of time. I just indicated there was nobody here at the meeting tonight.
Very good. Any questions of staff? Again, this is the parcel at 625 Getty. It was a duplex at one time. The report clearly states of the fire, safety, health conditions. And with that, I would ask the council to approve resolution 2014-59, ordering the repair and/or raising of the hazardous building located at 625 Getty Street, Sauk Center, Minnesota, as presented by staff.
So move.
Motion by Warren and seconded by Keith. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. All right, moving on to our last resolution in regards to this. Approved resolution 2014-60, declaring property hazardous at 331 Maple.
And this is the property, the Boyer property that Mr. Boyer spoke to you earlier tonight at 331 Maple. Again, it does list all the things that would need to be repaired and the costs associated with those, and the recommendation of the building official that it be raised and demolished. And your testimony, or the testimony of the owner, stated that he agrees that it should be demolished. He's the one that was requesting extra time as well to have it done beyond the 75 days. I don't know if that's something that you want to address at this time or not.
If we don't address it at this time, and a request comes back to the city to extend the time, how is it handled at that time? Sorry, Tom, it's just, it's a lot
Well,
of
that's
questions.
fine. I think if, first of all, when we started this, I get phone calls, and I've tried to impress upon these people that the city is serious and we're not going to grant too many extensions. However, if you're inclined to do that, I would have to come back and get an amended resolution, I think, and serve that also upon the property owner. My thought would be, if you do want to grant some additional time, that you can amend the resolution right now and do that. But this property has been vacant for about 3 years. And
I think the
longer
property,
than that.
I think the property has been vacant, and
You know, Mr. Boyer asked about next spring. Well, that's quite a ways out again. And I haven't tried to get anybody to demolish a property lately, so I don't know what might be involved. But that is a big structure, so there would certainly be some work to it. That's for sure. But it's up to you, gentlemen. I mean, you can, if you want to give them 3 months, something like that, you know, that's certainly workable.
that answers my question in regards to what our options are in the process. I don't want to make sure I put any delay in the legal process if that's where it goes, and I don't think that's the case in this particular situation, other than the fact that I recognize this as a very large structure, and not that 75 days, if there's a big equipment in there, whether it's a small structure or a large structure, it's going to dumb down quickly and it's going to go, and I get all that. But I also recognize the fact that it is quite large compared to all of the other structures that we're working with. And I do think if there's the intent, you know, that this particular building would entertain some additional time, I think 75 days is certainly a significant amount of time. That's 2.5 months. I would entertain a 90 days. I would not recommend going beyond that, but that's just my own personal opinion, and this council needs to make a decision about how we feel. But I just think some additional time. Yeah.
Before you act, I think there's been a little bit of a misunderstanding. He has 30 days. The Dubrava property, there was a recommendation, the possibility it could be repaired. The Dubrava property got 45 days to make the repairs, 30 days after that to raise it if the repairs could not be made. The recommendation in this report for Mr. Boyer's property was that it be raised. He has 30 days, according to this order. From the date you serve it upon him, he'll have 30 days. Now, the other thing to bear in mind, if he doesn't do it, then we're going to have to go into court and get an order to enforce your order.
Right.
And so that takes time also. So it just depends on how long do we want to extend this process.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, because that changes many things in regards to what we're thinking. It goes from less than half of the time of what we're going. I'm going to ask if the council don't mind me to bring Mr. Dubrava back up to the mic to ask him a couple questions if the council...
Dubrava?
Or excuse me.
Boyer.
Mr. Boyer, sorry. Dick, if you could come up. As you can see, this council is obviously wants to see the building removed as you do. And again, we want to work with you to give you the necessary time or some time to get that done.
Sure.
30 days, I think, obviously is a short timeline. However, I was thinking 75 to 90 days. In the same tone, we got a full council here that's going to make a recommendation tonight on something on this, I'm confident. And what do you feel you want to do this? You want to hire somebody to get them in here? Are you looking at doing it yourself? Give me a little bit of information.
I'm going to weigh out my options, and the biggest thing would be coming up with the funds, of course, to do this in 45 to 70 days. We're refinancing. We own 3 houses here, and 4, including this one in Sauk Center here alone. We're refinancing one right now that's taken over almost 3 months. So as far as demoing the house, I would like to weigh my options and see if it's feasible for me to do it myself or to hire it out, and what the cost is going to be. Nothing's been mentioned about the cost of demoing these houses here this evening, and I don't know if, Tom, if you have any information on that? Because I haven't,
I do not have any specific information on demoing costs, but I would offer this for some consideration for all the property owners. If they all signed a consent order authorizing the city to do this, it would get done quite quickly, and there might be some economies of scale that could be,
as far as a group.
well, as far as a package deal, if we could get a hold of a contractor that might benefit the property owners also. So, you know, I'm willing to explore that. And after this meeting, after you issue the order, I'm going to visit with these property owners again.
Right.
And see if we can get some consents from them. But that's one thing for all of them to consider is there might be some economies of scale to having the city do it.
Very good. Okay.
Can I ask for clarification, Tom? So if the property owners signed a consent for us to take this over, essentially the 30-day limit, 45 days, 75 days, whatever, are irrelevant because the city has the authority to do it on our time scale.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yep. And Tom, you will be reaching out to each property owner with that option as well, correct?
I will, and I did send them each a proposed consent
Okay.
to raise order.
I just didn't see anything as far as the cost, what kind of numbers we were talking about.
Okay.
And that, of course, would be that we would need time to get those funds for this also.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks.
I guess I would caution, you know, if extra time is granted, I'd hate to have someone spend 30 days destroying this building and it be standing in a state of disrepair that someone could get hurt on as they're doing it. I guess I'd rather see it go down in one day within that 30-day span. My thoughts.
Okay.
See, if I could just answer a question I think that I heard there. When the city last demolished a house in town and granted it had been burned, so we had to do some additional testing on it because of the fire. And we did hire a contractor. It did cost about $9,000, and because that site had to be hauled to Monticello because it had burned. And that included capping the utilities, and it included taking out the foundation, digging out the basement, filling it with black dirt, and reseeding the lot. Then the city assessed it to the property, and it is paid in installments with the property tax. So that is how that one occurred. So it kind of give you an idea, that was a few years ago, that we did use a local contractor to do that. And if they did sign the consent, we as well would go out to a couple contractors and get some estimates. We don't have the equipment to do it on our own. We would hire a local contractor just like they would have to do.
So in regards to the signing of the consent, which I think is a very important piece, if they were to do that, Vicki, and we took over the responsibility, and I understand the timelines and everything is obviously our responsibility at that point, all of those costs then would be assessed back to those properties through the assessment onto their tax roll. They would not be billed outside of it being on their taxes, or would we still invoice them? And then if they didn't, how are you going to handle that part of it?
What we would do is after the contractor is paid, we would invoice the property owner. And then at that point, by the time of the end of the year came, then we would have the option of assessing it to their property tax if they were unable to pay it.
Everybody understand that? I mean, we do that now on some unpaid debts at the end of the year for different things.
Right. And I believe the statute allows us to carry it for up to 5 years.
Okay.
So it's an installment situation.
So at that point, and I understand that these homes are in these conditions for a number of different reasons, and in some cases, they're financial. And so if there's not the ability to pay to have it demoed now, there are some alternative options to assess those costs over a 5-year or a given period of time. But at some point in time, whether it's through a sale of that parcel, through whatever it may be, those dollars will be recouped by the city. It's just we're fronting it rather than the owners at the particular
Correct.
time.
It's exactly correct.
Okay. And I just wanted that for the record for clarification. Hearing that and all of that clarification, and I hope everybody understands that's here tonight, not just in respect of the property at Maple Street, but all of the properties. The waiver option is, I think, an option that everybody has. With that, do we have a motion from the council in regards to Resolution 2014-60 declaring property hazardous, excuse me, let me back up. Approve Resolution 2014-60 ordering the repair and/or raising of a hazardous building located at 331 Maple Street, Sauk Center, Minnesota.
I'll make a motion to approve.
You're making a motion to approve as presented?
Yep.
Motion by Dave to approve the resolution as presented by Stan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Warren. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. All right, that is all we have for action items this evening. That will take us right into our unfinished business, which is an amended part of your agenda as presented tonight, which is the hydrology and hydraulic study proposal that we did get fairly late in the week, and then the stuff handed out tonight. So I hope everybody had a chance to see them. Vicki?
Okay, this was at the July 2nd council meeting. The city council asked the city engineer, Keith Yap, to present a scope of services proposal for hydrology study to determine what avenues the council has available to deal with the stormwater in the vicinity of Getty, Beltline, and 12th Street. And Mr. Yap did provide me with the proposal late in the week, which I did forward to you in email, and you received your hard copies tonight. You recall at the last council meeting, he had kind of off the cuff thought it might be about $15,000. As you'll see, it's somewhat higher, around $19,000 once he put pen to paper for that. So I think, I know one of you or two of you had asked me questions about that he's here to answer. And if the council does choose to proceed with that, there was some cost about funding of it, and it could potentially be funded with the stormwater utility because this project was one of the 3 trunk lines proposed to be funded by that utility. Or they could be dollars that were intended to fund the city's share of the Beltline project for this year. Otherwise, those dollars will be set aside for next year when that Beltline project is done. So he's here to answer any questions, to go over the proposal with you, and I guess then you can consider that and either proceed or not.
All right, Keith?
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I thought, because you may not have had a chance to really go through it in detail yet, I thought the best thing would be to go through, kind of summarize, what the studies, what we're going to do, how we're going to approach it, what ultimately you're going to get out of it, and then also, the use of that study and how it can be used as we move forward. As we talked quite a bit about this at our last meeting in terms of the issues in the area, so we all know that there's flooding concerns in the area. We talked a little bit about some different alternatives, some different possibilities, and those are the things that are incorporated in here. We would actually be looking at different alternatives. Ultimately, as I see it, we pretty much have to get from that area of the Getty and Beltline area somehow all the way to the river. It's possible we might be able to find some way of utilizing the existing infrastructure that's there, but I kind of doubt ultimately it'll work, and we'll end up having something that would go all the way to the river eventually. This study would look at that big picture, how ultimately a trunk system has to go through this system. Doesn't necessarily have to be all built at once, but this would lay out the roadmap for what would need to be done. It would look at those different alternatives. We talked about not only conveyance of piping, we talked about infiltration, we talked about ponding opportunities. Those things would all be included as we look at the alternatives. And the alternatives would also look at several different routes of how we might get through there. We kind of talked about going down 12th Street. We talked about perhaps going around, essentially paralleling I-94, perhaps cutting through Timberline and somehow through there. Those things, those alternatives would all be looked at as part of this study. So it would lay out, here's options. Ultimately, say would recommend this is what we think would be the best option for a reason such as cost would be one, construction, ease of construction, issues of easements, all those kinds of things would play into part. We would make a recommendation thereof. So cost estimates would be included for all those, all the alternatives that were looked at. The study would lay out, once again, as I mentioned, the roadmap. And we'd also look at whether we could do this in pieces. You know, what could be done perhaps on a short-term basis, and then the rest that could be done at a later point in time. The study would be used, if you really look at it normally we do a feasibility report for a study. This really would encompass probably 80+% of a feasibility study. If we move forward and you go into potentially assessments, that would be the part that would be essentially added to it. If you went forward with a project, we'd really have to amend and just add a little bit of language to it, and that would be about it, to make it be something that the council could act upon and meet all the requirements of, for funding and moving the project forward. So this is a study that can be utilized. It's not just going to be one and sit on the shelf. If 5 years from now you choose to move forward with this could be just pulled right off, and here's the backbone of what needs to be done. So it really gets you down the line. It's not something that wouldn't be used again, a year, 2 years, 3 years now, if the council chooses to, postpone for some period of time. So it was a little higher when we were here last time. I was just kind of going off the top of my head. Once you put pencil and paper on this, the cost, there was a fair amount of time, look at the alternatives that would take to go through this. We are proposing to do that on an hourly basis with a not to exceed, which is identified here. Some areas are like data collection. If data collection goes smoother than hoped, that would be an area that we would save some dollars and wouldn't need to spend the amount of time that we have estimated in there. So there may be some areas that possibly we can save some money as we go through. But it would be hourly, not to exceed, unless it's outside of the tasks identified here. And that would be something that would have to be, I'd bring back to you, or it'd be directed by you to do X, Y, Z, which might be outside of the scope. So that's how it would propose to be done. Timing-wise, look at having it done and ready for your second meeting in September, where we'd provide a presentation and you could decide how you wanted to proceed at that point in time. And once again, that may be a piece thereof, or the whole thing, or someplace in between. So if you have any questions of me.
I have a couple, Keith.
Okay.
I understand that there is a significant value. I mean, we need to have a plan in place. We have been we know there's work got to be done. The county has extended it out another year in order for us to plan and to come up with somewhat of a solution. I'm a bit unclear in regards to where this project is really starting and ending. I realize we're ending at the river to some degree, where we're going to take this flow of water along County Road 186, 12th Street, and how we're going to get it there. And you're really focusing on that corner, or that interexchange, 71 and west. However, we know that there's significant work being done along 186 all the way up to, is it Center Street that runs past Fleet? Pat and Shod. Right. All the way up to where the culvert's being opened up in front of Fleet Supply. This doesn't appear to go up and look at that and take that into consideration.
This would look at what would be the trunk facilities for that whole drainage shed, which does include all the way up to Center Street and actually slightly beyond to the north and to the west. So all the trunk facilities that would need to be installed in that area. Wouldn't go into the smaller laterals, but just those trunk facilities. So it may extend, it may extend slightly beyond Getty Street, but we would look at the entire drainage shed for that area.
Okay. Because I guess my concern would be is if I'm thinking you're going to do the study starting at Center Street or Fleet, and you're thinking you're starting at Getty and going east, then there's a big significant difference there of a couple of blocks.
It's the entire drainage shed through that area.
Is there a way of clarifying within the understanding of the right language that assures us that that entire trunk is listed? I know you got some things in here, but it's unclear to me.
Well, one thing you could do is, if the council chooses to authorize, we could just make that as part of your motion and do it that way, and then that would be documented that way.
Okay. We've had a lot of discussion in regards to timing on this whole project. in this study that you're looking at doing, in this proposal, are you gonna be able to come with a plan that's going to accommodate what we need to do for the county for next spring? They're gonna probably wanna go out to bids, and we should be going out to bids if there's work that needs to be done in January.
Yep, we would need to move fairly quickly upon receiving the report and making the decision as to what you want to do. And as we've talked about before, that could be a portion thereof. So, this plan lays out, including right down to elevations, is how we'd put it together. So you could actually do a piece of that system. And that may be the only thing that gets done is with the county system in 2015. You may choose to do more than that. But we would, there's no question, we mentioned that before, it's pretty tight. I mean, things have to keep moving forward. I will endeavor to try to get it for our first meeting in September, but there's a lot of work. I'm not sure I can guarantee at this stage that we're going to be able to get it all completed by that first meeting in September. However, what we can do is kind of provide you with progress reports as we go forward. Here's where we're going. Here's what it's looking like. So you're kind of in the loop as we move forward. That would help, so that when we get to the second meeting in September, say that's when the official presentation is made, you kind of already know where it's going. So you'd be thinking ahead a little bit. So that's one thing we can do, just to kind of keep things on track.
All right. And then the last question that I had was in regards to, there's a tremendous amount of, there's quite a bit of infrastructure, flow, different size pipings, different restrictions, a lot of things over the course of many a years as that trunk system has been maybe modified and upgraded a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
How do you intend to understand and take a look at what's currently there versus what you're proposing to put there? We have, I'm sure there's some history and some documentation of current stormwater facilities, but do you pull in all of that data together, and are you actually going out there and lifting up manholes and looking down in there and saying?
It might be, it's probably a little of both. First of all, we'd look at for the stuff that's easy to get to. What's in records that's been done so far? What can we find with county records, city records, go through those things. Then we would fill in the gaps with physical survey, or if there's something that's unclear, the information we have, we'd actually do a physical survey of that. And that's what's in the data collection. I've included, surveying within there. If we're able to get a lot of it from paper, that would save that time. And ideally, it'd be great if we didn't even have to go out and do any survey. I kind of suspect that's likely not going to be the case, but I do have physical survey in there. So, because if you don't start out with really knowing what's out there, you're just kind of guessing. So that really is the really key foundation to build upon, is what's there now. Because we want to utilize what's there now to the, we have an investment in it. So let's use what we can, what makes sense to use, so we can minimize the costs for future infrastructure.
And I will assume you're going to be visiting with the public utilities to see if there's additional work that they plan on or needs to be done over in their projected, their long-term plan in regards to facilities. If we're going to be tearing up highways and main trunks, I would guess we're having discussions with them and informing them of how our study's going, what the plan is looking like, to make sure there's any additional work they need to have done.
Yeah, we'd certainly talk with them. A lot of the stuff on 12th Street and through there is fairly new, so it's not, so there's probably not a lot that's going to go there. We'd want to avoid all that new stuff as much as possible. 12th Street's got a lot of stuff in it, so it's going to be difficult to try and figure out where to go and what makes the most sense through there. But we will definitely be looking at that and coordinating with them.
I think the main thing is we kind of approved the study and everything at the last council meeting up to 15,000, but these are all good questions. The main thing is now we got an increase of almost $5,000 over what you had originally said, but I don't think we really have much choice, because if we're going to do anything at all, we got to have something done so we know what we're doing is going to be right. So, that to me, that's the bottom line. And if we kind of got our back up against the wall as far as the timing with the county and everything, as far as yes or no, or if we approve the increase in the cost.
Absolutely, and I think the bottom line is for us to have these types of discussions so that Keith knows what this council's expectations are and what the community knows what we're doing and how we're spending these dollars and why it's going up, so. But yeah, I agree, we truly have very limited options, unfortunately, maybe we need to be looking at these types of projects further in advance as we go forward, but this is one of those things where I think it came up by what the county is doing, and really forced us to make maybe a quicker plan than what we originally had.
This is really similar, if you remember when we started quite a ways back now with the 4th Street project. It's pretty much the same thing that we did back then, and, you know, I think that's been quite a successful project and has done really well from a stormwater perspective. So it really starts from that, having a good plan of attack to begin with, and then it gives us the roadmap to get this done. It gives you, the city, knowing what we should be doing, how much it's going to cost, so we can plan accordingly.
Right. All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, I think we need to have action on this, Vicki, since we approved it to 15 and it's now to 19, you want to just?
Well, I'll make a motion to accept the quote and proceed.
All right, we have a motion by Dave to accept the quote as proceeded, and not to exceed. Dave, if you don't mind me to add this new fact, $19,998.
As shown, yep.
All right.
And if you wish to add what we talked about earlier, just to make sure that, you know, that it covers the entire drainage shed for that
Well,
area.
if we need to, I mean, it talks about
Well, there was
the
just a
drainage area
question.
north and west.
It was just a
so
question about
If you
it.
would
so-
add that,
I mean,
If you wanna have it in there, great.
And
I just wanted to
clarify
bring it
that
up,
that
that's
drainage area is being included,
Yep,
yes.
it would definitely be included, so it's up to you. I just wanted
Thank you.
to remind you. I'll second it.
We have a motion by Dave and seconded by Warren to move forward with the study as proposed to include the entire drainage area. Any other questions, comments? I'll call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against.
Thank you very much. We'll get started.
All right, thank you.
No coffee breaks on this one.
No tea either.
All right, we're going to, moving on here to some new business. We've got a couple things going on here with this. We got to set a special meeting date for our budget review. Currently, we have August 26th of 2014 at 5:30 suggested. How does that look?
I suggested that date because it's, you know, about the time of the month or the time of the year that we normally would do it. The only other thing is when I talked to Councilman Olson, Monday works best for him for a time to be able to be at meetings, and so maybe the 25th. Later in the week, I would go against, I wouldn't really want to do that because we have to get your comments back together and get it back into the council packet for the next week, so. I would say
So.
26th is on a Tuesday?
26th is a Tuesday, yeah.
Or the 25th?
But I would say anywhere between like the 21st and the 26th, in that time frame. Gives us time, the department heads are working on it, they get it back to me, I go to the finance committee, get their stuff back, get it out to the full council, so if we, in that time frame between the 21st and the 26th, I think we can make that work.
Well, if Mr. Olson was asking for the 25th, if everybody else is okay with it.
fine with me.
Why don't we go for the 25th?
We'll make it work.
Okay, 25th.
25th? Okay. And that'll be the workshop session.
Yep.
that we do.
And then also, just as a FYI, the union contract negotiations are underway. First meeting coming up here soon. And then we also have under new business, something that was amended and added was a proposal for a shared part-time patrol officer. Vicki, you wanna, Brian, wanna talk about that?
We do have, Chief Fredericks has been in contact with the new chief from Melrose regarding the opportunity to hire a shared part-time police officer. We've done it in the past and it's worked well. We do have scheduling conflicts with the two part-time officers that we have right now simply because they also have jobs, and so we're trying to make that work between the cities. And the city of Melrose has authorized their chief to kind of begin the process of looking at it, and now I've heard as of today, I believe, that they're going to take actual action tomorrow night. So they're moving quite rapidly, quicker than I think we initially thought. And Chief Fredericks is recommending that we do it, and I'm going to let him take over here and answer any questions that you may have, maybe some questions about budgeting, scheduling, and those types of things. I know that you probably are going to have those types of questions. There's questions about overtime, and right now, we're having trouble filling, like when officers take vacations and they're off sick. We're ending up having to fill those sometimes with other regular officers, and we end up getting into overtime. We'd prefer to pay a part-timer to fill that shift at a regular rate than a regular officer at an overtime rate. Plus, in addition, the part-timers are lower on the pay scale. So it kind of works out better for us that way from a budgeting standpoint. As far as other costs, you're going to have your uniform costs. We're going to have some training and some licensing, and those things are kind of minimal when you compare the savings for the overtime budget. But Brian is going to answer all your questions.
Okay. All right, Brian, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, we have 2 good part-time officers, but like any part-time position for these people, they have to maintain a full-time job. So, when we're asking them to work, they're juggling around their full-time job already. And it's just been to the point where our officers are maxing out on a lot of their vacation because they're seniority now. A lot of them are in longevity now that they're coming to their full steps. And they're coming in and getting maxed out on vacation, so they're trying to use it up without losing it. So there's been a lot of situations in the last year here where there's, I've had full-time officers, help a guy, fill in a shift. So I would prefer to see use part-time officers to recoup that. I think the cost for additional part-timer to be available to call one, the costs are minimal. I have a total of like $1,000 that would include the post license, physical exam, psychological exam, uniforms, duty belt. So a total of about $1,000. So I'm splitting that with Melrose, it'd be about $500. Of course, there's training once we do have them, but that's pretty minimal. Pretty minimal to the budget, actually. And I think we can make that work into our current training budget. So,
Brian, I'll ask you a couple of questions that I asked you earlier. And
Yep.
I know we have two part-time folks, and like you said, they have other full-time jobs, but how many part-timers do you end up having if you have 2 part-timers and either one of them are available to cover shifts because they've got full-time jobs, and now we just add another part-timer? Are we really are we fixing a problem? Do we really go back to saying, well, why not have 2 part-timers that are available when we need them rather than have 3 that are never available if we do call them?
Right.
What's that number? Is it,
Well,
I know Warren and I from the Personnel Committee had a discussion a little bit to say, well, what is it? Is it 3? Is it 10? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I always look at it as a standpoint. Well, part of it's like gambling. These people have the jobs, and one might have the hours that just don't work, when we ask. And so that falls into play. Another of it I look at as what we would need if our city had a disaster or if we had a criminal event that happened, what personnel would we need to bring in? Is 8 officers, 9 officers enough to help an event that would happen? In my mind, a town of this size, having the 3 additional officers, that you'd be able to call, hopefully they'd be coming in to help, would help a situation like that. And just availability of having that option to call a third one to fill in hours, and especially in an emergency situation. Is there a rhyme or reason to 3? That's kind of my logic towards it. I don't know if it's right or wrong. That's just the way I feel, and I think it would work out and probably save money working it with part-time employees.
See, that's one of my suggestions was maybe we look at 2 part-time people instead of just 1, and not necessarily let one of our 2 part-timers go, or maybe neither one of them. But if they're not there, but at least we can spread this out a little bit. Like you said, we get guys going on vacation. It spreads our regular force quite a bit. Even with hiring 2, I think we might be able to better off the budget as far as in overtime.
Well, I just think of it as the cost of maintaining them. Once we have these 2 part-timers now that are working for us, just to keep them, the cost is, it's not much. And you're training them, giving them required training post hours they need, so you give them up and then to me, it's more logical to keep them on the roster and that they are available to work when they can, and it's cost effective that way.
I think there's always a cost to having staff, and I just like to
Yep.
make sure that we understand that, even though we don't utilize them, and I know you said the cost is minimal over the course of bringing somebody on, but yes, we do have to maintain training and so many hours and
Correct.
and those things, and it's shared with another city. And I think if we have 2 that aren't accessible, they're costing us, whether it's $50 or $5,000. And
Right.
if we have 4 that ain't accessible, we have a chance that 1 out of the 4 probably are, or 1 out of the 3.
Right.
I just think, you gotta balance that cost versus that availability, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4. And it's just small, it's more of what's the right number and the right thing to do versus, I think getting another one, I'm not opposed to it. It's just, we gotta balance, if people aren't available, then they're not
Right.
available.
And I have common sense with that. I think
Right.
if I'm seeing an issue with that where it's just not panning out, this person doesn't want to, a lot of these young, I shouldn't say, we have Officer Jungles that's middle-aged and he does a fine job and works, but a lot of these younger guys are looking for a full-time job. And I see it, if they come to work and don't look like they want a career in law enforcement, then that's a situation where we say, we're going to have to let you go and move on to someone that does want to maybe a career in law enforcement.
And that might be a situation where to make that fine line is whether or not they stay as part-time or not, is maybe we come up with, if you're a part-time officer with the police department, you have to put in at least this many hours a year to keep that part-time status.
Might be
If you
something to consider.
can't come up to that commitment, then maybe it's where, hey, sorry, but we might have to part ways.
Right.
And maybe that's something we got to look at too.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? Any
As far
thoughts?
as Melrose is going to action already on Thursday, how's that going to fit into your timeline? Because I'm sure you're going to be part of the interview.
I'll make it work, but yeah, it'll be
I know this is a partnership. I really don't want the other town dictating to us how fast we're going to move on our end.
Yeah, I understand. And I understand that. He called me last Friday, I think it was. So, yeah, it's short notice, and I apologize for that. I just thought as long as he called, I'd bring it up, and I thought it'd be a good time to do it, so.
So you're saying for the cost for us to get it to be part of the 3rd part-time officer with Melrose, we're looking at $500?
Yep, correct.
So our commitment tonight would be to move forward with it with an anticipated expectation of $500. Do you have it in your budget?
Yes.
Okay, I hope so. With that, then I think I will ask for action, because that gives Brian some direction for Brian to move forward with entertaining a 3rd part-time officer in partnership with Melrose. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Warren, seconded by
Yeah, second.
Dave. I saw you nod your head, Dave.
Yep.
All right. With that, any questions? Call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against.
Thank you, Combs.
Thank you. All right. We're moving on to our consent agenda then this evening. We have 3 things on our consent agenda tonight. We have our schedule of claims for a total of unpaid claims of $216,418.97. Paid claims of $557.83 for a total of $216,976.80. We also had June checks, and we had 3 payrolls in June, so we have check numbers 2232E through 2256E and 35224 through 35315, totaling June checks of $359,810.97. Stuff was in your packet for your information. We also have a resolution 2014-62 This is a donation contribution to the city from the men's card playing group for $227.91. Again, I thank them for their continued support and donation to the senior center and their contributions. Is there any questions in regards to the consent agenda as presented? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Dave, seconded by Keith. Is there any discussion? Call the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. And there's just one last thing in your agenda, just to informational, some correspondence from the Congregation of Jehovah's Witness, i.e. Bob Brophy sent a letter into the council, and again, they're showing their appreciation of the city and how we were able to accommodate their needs while they were building their new facilities. So just for your information. That is the end of our agenda, and there's nothing else on our agenda this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion by Warren, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This meeting's adjourned.